All right, are you guys ready?
Yes.
This is Chapter 6, Your Mother. They got home shortly and without incident. It turned out they didn't need to worry about their lateness. While Toriel fussed over them, as could be expected, she didn't push the issue of where they had been. That might have been because of the golden petal she plucked off of their shirt. She glowered at it for perhaps an unreasonable amount of time, but didn't mention it out loud. Chara still held Asgore's excuse in reserve if worse came to worse. She seemed more concerned over the expression they wore, but if there was one thing Chara had excelled at in life and in death, it was avoiding talking about their feelings. They managed to brush off the concern and keep their comforting smile fixed on all the time. They said little over dinner, but listened to Toriel as she talked about her work, about the effort going on to integrate monsters and children into the school, about her various letters to local authorities, about things as small as the funny joke that she had heard from a friend earlier. Toriel had been lonely in the ruins and still seemed to be trying to catch up for lost time to this day. Chara didn't mind. Listening to her had the same comforting nostalgia as listening to Asgore. And a bit of the same guilt. They did their best to hide it. "And here's another," Toriel went on. "It goes like this. How did the skeleton know what would happen next?" Chara smiled politely and asked how. Toriel's eyes danced with mirth. "He felt it in his bones!" They couldn't help it. They laughed. It wasn't at the joke. They had heard it right from the mouth of a particular skeleton at least 30 times, and that wasn't even counting resets back in the underground. But even though they had been around Toriel for 2 years on the surface now, there was still something so strangely delightful about actually hearing her laugh while sharing a space with her. To actually be the one that she was directing the joke towards, to actually be her child. The laugh didn't take long to die away. They poked at their shepherd's pie, uncomfortably aware of Toriel's concern returning to her gaze. Great. More guilt. They couldn't even get through an evening meal without ruining it for someone, could they? "You should take over," they mumbled to Frisk. "I'm just messing this up." Frisk was quiet, and for a moment Chara was afraid they were going to back out of their earlier offer to step in if need be. Their voice, however, finally came. "I will if you really need me to," they said, "but you're not messing anything up. You're allowed to be sad, you know." They almost flinched at that, and weren't sure why. Frisk's tone was soft and reassuring, perhaps calculatedly so, given how afraid they were of losing their temper after the other day. Even at their angriest, Frisk had never given them grief over their emotions, like they themselves had done to Azrael more times than they could bear to recount. "Come on, Azrael. Cry, baby. Big kids don't cry." They hadn't said those things to be cruel, but it was only now that they couldn't bottle up their emotions anymore and felt like letting it all out that they realized just how cruel they had been. "Azrael forgave you, Chara." "You can see my thoughts now?" "I don't need to." Chara didn't move their right hand, but it nonetheless moved to gently rest on their left, thumb gently rubbing back and forth. Such a ridiculous gesture, and yet one that meant so much to them. "I'm starting to see what he meant," Toriel said suddenly. Chara was jerked out of their own head, suddenly aware of just how far they had retreated out of reality. It was a shock. "I don't understand," Chara said slowly. Who meant?" "Sans." There was an odd expression on Toriel's face as she regarded her child, one tempered with both doubt and concern. "He is a strange one, and usually filled with nothing but jokes, but he did say something especially strange when we chatted on the phone today." Chara was frantically going through their meeting with Sans today to see if they had said anything particularly wrong when Toriel continued. He said, "Keep an eye on Frisk. They're not feeling like themselves today." He almost said it as though it was one of his silly puns, but I could tell that there was seriousness to it. And the more I think about it, the more I realize he was speaking of the exact same thing I had been noticing since you got out of bed. You haven't quite been yourself today, have you? There was a silence over the table that could have been cut with a knife. Chara sat stiff and still in the chair, shepherd's pie completely forgotten, as every faculty shut down simultaneously.
Frisk isn't the faculty, though.
Sans knew. Of course Sans knew. Even if that person is not you. They had felt like an idiot for missing all of his not-so-subtle jokes. This was that legendary fart master thing all over again. It hadn't been funny then, either. Asgore knew. How could he not? He had known them better than almost anyone. And Mom, Toriel, of course she knew. Why had they ever believed that they could fool her? Why had they wanted to so desperately? Chara, Frisk interrupted, we're, freaking her out here again. I can tell. Take over. Are you Yes, just do it. A still moment. Toriel looked almost physically pained by the lack of progress in the conversation and the conflict on her child's face. Finally, Frisk relented. I'm fine, Mom. Just like that, their face and voice didn't belong to them anymore. They were hiding behind Frisk's like the disgusting coward that they were. But if anything, Toriel looked more disturbed, not less.
Well, yeah, she just turned into Frisk from Chara the whole day.
Well, she took a deep breath, looking profoundly uncomfortable. If you say so, I hate to press the topic, but something is the matter. I can tell, Frisk. Frisk frowned. Huh? Nothing's wrong, Mom. You do not have to tell me, but please, Frisk. She gave them a piercing look. Stop taking me for a fool. I will not force you to tell me, but I am not as small-minded as my constant worrying could lead you to believe. Chara took over abruptly. I have never considered you to be small-minded. You are a queen. Not in your lifetime, Frisk, she replied. There was a melancholy note in her voice. You have never known me as royalty. Well, maybe not, Frisk said awkwardly, nonchalantly taking control back. But I don't think you're dumb. You always know best, Chara added. It's just that... Frisk trailed off, passing off their body like a baton. Some things are impossible to discuss, Chara said. Even if we really want to, said Frisk. And we do want to. I want to, Frisk amended. Though I know how much you want to, too. Of course, Chara continued. I appreciate how much you want to help. Yeah, you're always there for me, and I know I could talk to you. Yeah. I know I could talk to you. I love you, they both said in unison. They both stared expectantly.
They both said? How does that work?
We both just wanted to say the same thing at the same time.
I guess so. They both stared expectantly at Toriel, who was staring at them with wide eyes as though they had been possessed.
They might have been.
Oops. Body swapping at the table was evidently not their greatest idea. Are you on drugs? She blurted it out quickly.
Here's fun. No, Frisk on Kara. Oh, Kara's a drug now?
She blurted it out quickly, almost hysterically, immediately covering her mouth as though she was shocked by her own outburst. Frisk, Kara, they could barely tell who they were right now. All they could manage was furiously shaking their head. Of course. Toriel rubbed her forehead gingerly. Forgive me. I trust you not to be led astray down that path. But if not that, then could it be? Neither human knew what to say or what to do as Toriel struggled to say what she said next. Her voice was trembling in a way that they had rarely heard from her. Frisk, I am going to show you the respect that I would afford an adult by being completely honest about my concerns. I would like you to be honest in turn. She looked at them with an almost pleading expression. Are you hurting yourself? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? They stared in surprise, feeling the weight of the words dropping between them. They could feel each other's confusion and being upset over the question, waiting cautiously for the other to respond. No, of course not, Frisk said. Mom, why would you think that? Because... She fidgeted with her paws, looking miserable. I am an old monster with many old memories. Mm-hmm. You know that I have failed to protect my children on many an occasion. Today, you especially reminded me of one of them. I can see them in you as surely as though I were looking at a photograph. You talk as I remember them. You walk as I remember them. Smile as I remember them. It is eerie. They were both silent. Frisk had no idea what to say, and Kara felt a familiar freight train's worth of guilt crashing into them. I must sound so delusional to you, Toriel continued, giving a short, mirthless laugh. I assure you, rationally, I am fully aware that you are not my Kara. The times that I see them in your smile are mere wishful thinking on my part. Anything else would be impossible.
Definitely.
Kara tried to open their mouth and speak. Frisk had backed away from control. They would let Kara say anything they wanted. They glowed with encouragement. But they couldn't. They couldn't any more than they could with Asgore. They remained silent. You have heard the story, Toriel went on softly. The story goes that my child simply grew ill. It was what I believed at the time as well. But I have since had many years to reflect on what happened. So many nights when it was all that I could think about. She took a deep breath. They poisoned themselves. Buttercups, I am certain. They had ample access to them. I should have seen it sooner, for I had seen what the flower's effects were, and I had seen how strangely Kara had acted in the months before. She sniffed abruptly, raising a paw to her face. She wiped away a tear that smoldered with the heat of a boss monster's fire magic, and took a moment to pull herself together. She knew more than she let on. Kara's mouth was dry. This was exactly the sort of pain that they had wanted to spare her. She never needed to know She never needed to have to know that her own child had done something so stupid. The cruelest joke of all was that she blamed herself. Mom! Kara's voice was tight. They wished Frisk would take over again. You don't have to tell me about all of this.
I feel as though I do,
she replied, still sniffing.
I don't want to stifle you with my fears, but likewise, I cannot just watch history repeat itself. You remember how it was when I saw you trying to leave the ruins?
I remember a bunch of fireballs between me and the door, Frisk murmured. There was an immediate spike of guilt and panic.
I didn't just say that out loud, did I?
Kara ignored them.
History is just that, Mom. I am not going to do anything to myself. I am truly sorry that I have made you worry about that.
They were truly sorry for a lot of things they couldn't fix.
The truth is, they continued, last week I had an argument with a friend, and it has put me a bit under the weather. But that was then. I really am feeling better.
Toriel looked through them. After a moment, she seemed to relax somewhat, trusting. It hadn't really been a lie, anyway.
Well, if you say that is the case, then I believe you,
she said, eyes darting away as though she felt awkward.
Forgive me. I know I take off on flights of fancy where your well-being is concerned.
It is all right, Kara said earnestly.
We know that you care,
Frisk added. Toriel looked at them askance for a moment, before nodding with a weak smile.
I do so very much, Frisk. Now, on to lighter topics. How was your day?
They gave a smile of their own, as sincere as it could be given the things that they had just learned their mother knew. They tried to distance themselves from the cold pit in their stomach and focus on the good things.
It was great. I made up with that friend and spent some time down by the lake. We just enjoyed being alive. I am truly glad,
Toriel said warmly.
You have made so many wonderful friendships. I'm glad that you can rely on them.
Their smile twitched even more. Frisk had friendships. Kara's was in the singular, and they weren't even sure they wanted any more. Mom wasn't talking to both of them anymore. She was talking to Frisk. They had to know. They had to test their luck. They had to see what she would have to say about where they had actually been, about what it actually was that had brought some peace to them today.
I suppose,
they said, cautiously gauging her reaction,
I spent a while with Asgore this afternoon.
They regretted it immediately when they saw her smile disappear. She already knew where they had been, but it was evident that she didn't like it one bit. They could spot the disapproval in her face a mile away. Apparently, they couldn't make it through a single conversation without downing buttercups and ruining everything.
I see,
Toriel said slowly. Her voice picked up a hint of anger, though Kara could tell it wasn't directed at them.
Did he perturb you in any way? Did he say something that he shouldn't have?
No! They said it too hurriedly, perhaps in too harsh a tone, and they winced.
What I mean is, it is the opposite. We chatted some, and then we worked in his garden for a while. It was nice. It made me feel a lot better.
After all this time with Frisk, Kara had become quite an expert on being at war with oneself. Toriel's face betrayed an ongoing civil war between her love and her bitterness. Fittingly, love prevailed, and an only slightly forced smile returned to her snout.
Good,
she said finally, a bit stiffly.
If it helped put everything at ease, then that is all that matters.
There was an awkward silence at the table. Toriel was the one to break it after some time. I did not realize that gardening was something you enjoyed. I don't have what some would call a green thumb, but if you'd like, we could find something here to grow.
That might be nice, Chara replied. But it's not really the gardening that I like.
Ah, I see. Toriel's tone came out perhaps a bit more curtly than she had intended. She glanced guiltily to the side. Apologies. You are more forgiving than I am. I should not be as surprised as I am. I mean, if we refused to make friends with anyone who killed us a few times, we wouldn't have very many friends, Frisk said. Or a mom. I've been killed by every single dreamer, Chara replied grimly, including myself.
What does that mean?
Chara killed herself, and then Asriel got killed by a human, which kind of killed Chara's soul. And then if she's counting the time,
I suppose if Chara went along with Frisk, then Toriel and Asgore and Flowey all killed Frisk. It was a dark remark, but Frisk laughed at it anyway. There came a point in every time-traveling teenager's life at which gallows humor became the usual way to handle bad memories. Unfortunately, Chara couldn't quite get in the mood for it themselves right now. They turned their attention back to Toriel. She was nodding, her eyes taking on a sheen as though she were somewhere else entirely. Of course, she said, barely more than whispering. Her voice had an unpleasant crack to it. He and Chara used to stay in the garden for hours. Not much talking, just being. The silence over the table grew yet darker. A heavy feeling tugged at Chara's chest like an iron weight. They found themselves mumbling an apology for bringing those memories up again. No, Toriel said quickly, snapped from her memories. No, you did nothing wrong, my child. Just old memories eating at me once again.
Bad memories, they mumbled. I'm sorry I keep reminding you of them.
Toriel smiled weakly. This was different than her forced smile at the mention of Asgore. It was full of pain, much like the one Chara so often wore, but it was genuine at the same time. Frisk, you did nothing wrong. You reminded me of my child. It hurts to remember them, but that does not mean for a moment that I would rather forget them. They couldn't smile upon hearing that. Chara frowned, trying and failing so hard to understand. But they picked their words with care and agony.
I'm sure they wouldn't want you to hurt yourself by thinking about them. Wouldn't it just be better to forget them?
Toriel shook her head slowly. Of course not, Frisk. Any more than I would forget you if the unthinkable were to happen. The weak smile endured as she continued in the tone of a teacher. I believe it was a human who said something that I think about often. He said, the pain that I feel now is the happiness that I had before. That is the deal. To me, it means to remember that loss only hurts us when we had something truly precious before. How foolish it would be to forget something so wonderful over a little pain. Chara struggled to keep their voice from cracking.
They were that precious to you? Even though they
killed themselves? They didn't say. Even though they had killed her real son by proxy? Even though they had ruined so many lives? They were precious to me no matter what. Full of love and concern, she leaned across the table to pat them affectionately on the hand, smiling warmly with hot tears in her eyes. I loved Chara without conditions, Frisk, just as I love you. A warm gratitude surged in their chest. They felt it in double, their partner taking the words to heart at the same time. They weren't sure how to respond, but neither did Toriel make them feel like they needed to. She leaned back in her seat, that smile turning nostalgic. You would have gotten along well with them, she continued, her tone quiet and wistful. As well as with their brother. Sweet Asriel. The two of them were fast friends right from the start, and I have no doubt they would have been just as warm with you. I can almost see you in my mind's eye, a happy trio playing in the garden.
That's why I said Asriel needs to be saved.
See?
And then Chara too.
That would have been nice,
Chara said, a mix of strange feelings swirling in their stomach. Frisk squeezed their left hand in encouragement, and they appreciated it dearly. We did all play together once, Frisk mused. Except not in a garden.
You think of that as playing?
Chara said, recalling the incident. It was, after all this time, still one of the most vivid memories they had.
Incident?
One of the most important, too.
The entire universe was at stake.
Come on, I heard you shouting out his attack names. Chaos Saber, Star Blazing, Hyper Goner. You were into it.
Well, maybe a little. It brought back a lot of good memories.
I guess I was a little into it, too. I mean, getting disintegrated wasn't fun, but the rainbows were pretty. You take the good with the bad, you know.
Toriel seemed to take their outward silence as lack of interest, chuckling in embarrassment.
But my nostalgia is truly running wild today, isn't it? Forgive me, Frisk, I must be boring you to tears.
Not at all,
Chara said quickly.
I think we would have gotten along too.
A faint smile crossed their expression, half theirs and half Frisk's, half out of joy and half out of grief.
Like best friends.
No one talked much the rest of the meal, but then none of the three at the table really felt the need.
3 at the table.
Yeah. 3 at the table and 2 chairs.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 bodies.
I like how they're always saying we.
And they fail.
And sometimes accidentally say it out loud, yes.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I like how they just like casually switch.
Poor Toriel.
I like how
Can't wait for Chara to tell everybody everything, and then for Asriel to show up, and then to like have an epilogue where there is a trio playing.
Wow.
And then Toriel is like fine with Asgore again because all the kids exist.
Oh, wow.
I like how her
They're
first.
like slot endings generated.
Maybe even some
Give
kind
us
of
any
laser
story.
tag game or something. That would be fun.
Daddy,
That's the
I like
story
how.
will generate the best possible ending for
Oh,
it.
I forgot what I was gonna say. I like how Toriel's first response is, "Are you on drugs?"
No, Frisk is on Chara. That's
Mm-hmm.
or Chara is on Frisk. It might be. It's kind of both at the same time.
I'm sure that must have been pretty strange to hear it.
It's like constant.
No, but they're just talking, and it's like, and we love you. Yeah, and I also like this. Oh yeah, and we really,
Yeah, I mean,
No,
if you
I-
only hear it coming out in Frisk's voice.
but yeah, but like
You
they're
are-
saying,
Let's see.
like
Say it all
this,
in
and then
Frisk's
somebody,
voice.
and then he says,
Say it all in
yeah,
Frisk's voice.
I.
Yeah, so it would be, well, maybe not, but I don't think you're dumb. You always know best. It's just that some things are impossible to discuss, even if we really want to. And we do want to. I want to, I mean, though I know you want to, too. Of course, I appreciate how much you want to help. Yeah, you're always there for me, and I know I could talk to you. I love you.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That'd be weird.
That isn't quite how you talk to people.
but you do see Toriel's deep-seated fear that Frisk will die as well, like all her other children, and so she's hypersensitive to any fear or any possibility that they are on drugs or in,
Any
thinking
trouble.
about killing themselves like Kara. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's the end of chapter 6.
Is this the story? Is this story done?
Yes, this story is
How
done.
How many chapters?
There are 8.
Oh, yikes.
Chapter 7 is called Your Best Partner.
What's chapter 8 called? Your best friend?
Chapter 8 is called Oh, wow.
Is it super long?
Oh, my.
Is it super long?
Oh, chapter
Oh.
8. Oh, wow.
What?
I can't tell you.
Is it about saving Azrael?
You were asking
take
me
a
about
bet.
you were asking me about the chapter title, which I'm not telling you. And therefore I'm also not telling you what chapter 8 is about.
It's probably called Your Way to Save Azrael, which works really well. Also Kara.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anyway, yes.
Anyway.
Now there's very good reason to have
yeah,
like,
if Azrael was there, he'd just be like, "What's up, Frisk? Why are you weird? Are you Kara?"
I think if Azrael was there, Azrael would probably be very clear about what was going on.
really quickly.
Actually, that'd come to think of it, I'm not sure.
He would probably notice something was wrong and ask what was wrong.
I mean, he didn't know Kara was with Frisk originally, but yeah, he might.
Just called Frisk Kara most of the time, though.
Mm-hmm. Right, but he never suspected that they were. Once he realized it was Frisk, it's like, oh, you're Frisk, you're not Kara. He never figured out that there were two of them.
No.
2 Frisks.
But Frisk had been living with them for 2 years, and no one had ever thought this until Kara took control.
Right.
And I think if Kara suddenly took control in the fight or whatever, Azrael may have. Hey, maybe that's what they should do. They should That sounds like a story idea. Emily, get on it. Yeah, they're
Wait,
they're like in the Azrael fight, and then Kara takes control.
Oh dear. During Azrael.
Yeah.
Well,
Make a prequel to the gift. No, wait, don't.
if it's this kind of
Well, but I don't
story-
know that would help, because even during the fight, Azrael is still thinking it's Kara, and in fact is wanting to destroy the world so that he and Kara can play some more. No, he doesn't want to destroy the world. He wants to get a reset going so that he and Kara can continue being together. So if Kara in fact emerged, I don't know that would improve things.
I think but I think
But maybe it would. I don't know. Maybe Kara would have the right words to say.
Yeah, I think if Kara was actually there, I don't know if he would change it, but I don't know. But
I don't know.
Especially afterwards, if it was actually Kara.
Anyway, so it seems pretty clear that Sans knows.
Well, yeah, of
Sans
course.
always knows
He offered
everything.
a 2-for-1 deal thing,
Yeah.
even if the person is you. That's
Yeah.
extremely obvious.
Yep.
You think Toriel knows?
She thinks. But
Probably not as clearly as Asgore
she
would.
probably.
But-
I could see her thinking she's just delusional because she kind of
Yeah,
is
but she still
sometimes
does have
like that.
a lot of.
She is delusional, or she
Well,
thinks
like-
she's
like-
delusional?
That's
She
up to
thinks
you.
she is, and sometimes she's just
There were
desperately hoping.
There were
kind of.
several things where it seemed like she's like, oh, okay, whatever. And then like
She accepts what Frisk says, but she doesn't want to believe it or something.
That might be a good way of looking at it. The evidence is there, but maybe she's not seeing it or not willing to accept it. Okay, well, next time
Now
will
be
be,
current in their own body because that would make everybody happy.
yeah.
and it would also, it would also reduce confusion quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like Kara could do all of the stuff with Asgore, and then Toriel probably wouldn't mind.
I wonder if either of them would be sad, though, to not have the other one in their head anymore.
Probably.
Like when your Siamese twin is able to be separated and got your own life now and everything, but maybe you kind of got used to having that person there. I don't know. I don't know nothing.
Well, then just add Azrael.
Add Azrael and everything makes better. It's like a recipe.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you messed up the
Yeah,
recipe,
add
one
Azrael can go in their minds. In both their minds.
Add 2 teaspoons.
You have
they
a-
can just. He can
They can
be
talk
like,
to each other through Azrael.
yeah.
Wow.
Add 2 teaspoons of Azrael.
That would be great. Like, Kara goes to the store and Frisk is like, oh, hey, Azrael, can you tell Kara to pick up some pretzels? Sure, Frisk. Pause. Okay, they said they'll get it.
That sounds like a great way to do it.
Wow.
So that's the next one.
Looks like that Robert Heinlein story.
Yeah, it's like half science
Time for the
fiction,
stars.
half
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I bet if the thing he said in his terrible saving Azrael and Kara thing where they turned into an amalgamate,
Oh,
they'd
yeah.
be able to talk to each other in their head.
Yes, that's
They
true.
would probably
That is
enjoy
true.
that, honestly.
Yeah, except they're all drippy and goopy and viney and
Yeah.
stuff. Furry, viney.
Viney first, furry vines.
Yeah.
Alright,
Like,
yes, this is how.
Yikes.
This is definitely how the story will
How do you mix a
progress.
human and a monster into an amalgamate?
Well, Kara
Does it
had a
all-
monster
oh, yeah,
body, a
that's
magical
true.
body.
so they're essentially
Too much
both
determination
It would just
and
like
too
be a
little
goop.
body.
They're
Yeah.
essentially both monsters.
Maybe you could,
Ooh, Kara
maybe you
likes
could
that.
save the two of them by having them both become like apathetic and not determined anymore.
What?
And so when they
What?
cease being determined, you can pull them apart.
That
There you go.
would be so sad.
But that's how
If
you
they're-
get them back out.
But
From
How
each
would
other.
you give them? Would they just generate more new magic bodies?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it worked once.
I guess.
So you just gotta,
then if they,
you gotta get them both really lazy,
okay, so
and
they can just hang out with Sans for a couple of
totally
years.
bored,
That's
and
not how you
then
get
while they're bored,
undetermined.
oh well, how do you get undetermined?
You get them really depressed.
Get them,
Yikes.
get them like really ambivalent, or no, yeah, maybe ambivalent.
What's that mean?
Get them to
They
do
don't care.
like ambivalent is like
That's more sad.
you're torn in two different directions. So they're not determined, and while they're not determined, you just yoink them apart.
Well, if they're
Well,
gonna be
once
goofy
they get
in the first place,
determined-
they may as well.
You just gotta make sure that one soul goes in each direction. You don't want two souls to end up in one person's body.
that
They
would be-
would just like rip, and they wouldn't feel anything because it was goofy.
Maybe there's more surgical means to.
What do they eat? Do they like crisps?
They
Like
probably do like
everybody else?
chisps. I like
mean,
chisps.
they probably do in
Oh.
general.
Yeah,
potato chips are good.
yeah. That's why they're the last food in the game because it's the best.
Well, technically, last dream is like an inventory thing.
That's not a food.
It gives
It's
you
an
17
Azrael
HP.
food.
Yeah.
Also, how does human food heal monster HP? I mean, not monster HP, but like, how does human food heal HP? Like Sam said it did. All the fish tacos.
Maybe it wasn't.
Maybe Sans was just lying straight through his teeth.
Maybe it was monster fruit that he bought.
Does fish give you vitamin D?
I don't know.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say yes because KoboldKing probably researched it,
Okay.
You have.
but I don't know.
You could like,
Vitamin D
Google it.
is from the sun.
Yeah,
Okay, so the
it
fish
gives
are
you
the
like
sun, that's
omega
amazing.
fatty acids or something.
Wait, are you talking about the medicine?
Well, but no,
Pills,
it comes from fish.
So this time,
Just because it has the word fatty in it
So
doesn't
this-
make it incorrect. Omega-3 fatty acids.
Hey, I've seen that.
So this time, instead of
That's
logic, our
incredible.
strand is biology and science.
Yeah,
Logic.
Horticulture.
yeah.
That was last time.
And we'll show the same level of expertise that we did on all the other subjects.
Like, oh dear.
We have a lot of
Like
expertise and
math.
everything.
Yeah, they're definitely the same level of expertise.
Yeah, it is.
What we were saying is, I
We-
think Azrael and Kara would like work well if they were like talking to each other.
we
As
just
long
need
as
the
they-
Azrael.
Most people do work well when they're talking to each other.
That's not what I meant.
Oh,
Yeah, they just both need to have Azrael in their head and like
That
Kara in her
would
own
be
body,
way
and then
too
like as an
confusing.
Azrael intermediary, yeah.
No.
Does he have to tune in to just one of them?
Mm,
Sorry, hang on a minute,
No,
Frisk.
you
I've got Kara on here. Sorry,
No,
Frisk's on
it's
hold.
not like a
sad.
It's not like a phone line where somebody else is trying to call. It's like you're talking to somebody and then somebody else starts talking.
Oh, and interrupting.
You can hear both people.
But the other person doesn't know the first person doesn't know the other person's
Make it
talking, so you have to say,
two-way, so everybody can hear.
Kara, Frisk's talking to me. I can't talk to you right now.
Just make them all be able to talk to each other.
Azrael would have two different people in his head, and they wouldn't be able to, like, no.
Wait,
then
what?
They would be,
What?
like,
Wait.
sharing.
Wait, suddenly this has changed. Azrael now has two people in
Yeah,
his head.
because he's connected to both of them.
But he doesn't have a body.
He doesn't. He has a mind.
Okay, so they're connected to Azrael, but, like, Azrael doesn't exist?
Azrael's in Frisk's mind, and Azrael is in Kara's mind.
Oh.
Kara and Frisk have bodies. Azrael's just the
But
mind
can they hear?
in there.
Can they hear each other?
They cannot.
It's like that was a phone line.
Yes, they cannot hear each other at distances, but they can both talk to Frisk. I'm sorry, they can both talk to Azrael, and Azrael can relay the message. So that's why, yeah, if Kara's at the store, Frisk can send a message through Azrael. Pick up some ice cream.
All having bodies.
Oh.
They could play chess.
They can all have bodies, and then they can all just have like a.
They can all talk to each other in their minds.
Sure.
Hey, if
But
you
then-
save, hey, if you save
How are
Kara,
you going
can
to justify that in a story?
Hey, I'm really curious. If you save Kara, can Frisk still talk to them in their mind? That'd be
Well,
cool.
no, I think that would be the loss. Now you truly
That
are
was
alone
where
in
we
your
came
head.
With this whole thing in the first place.
Yep.
What if you amalgamated Frisk and Kara and no, actually no, that would be kind of
What?
It'd be kind of weird,
No.
but it wouldn't be fair.
No, that'd be sad.
What?
Besides, Frisk has a soul.
It wouldn't be terrible.
Yep.
No, it
Yeah,
would.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm
That'd
saying.
be kind of sad.
Am I supposed to know what my words are saying?
Kara and Azrael.
No reason to start now.
Kara and Azrael is a thing, and like I guess Kara and Frisk can also be like a thing. And like Frisk did talk to Azrael some, but like you can't just have them like there's a limited amount. Like they can be a trio and all do stuff together, but they all like have relationships with each other. And if you just lump them all together, and they all have to be together forever in each other's head, all three of them, that's not as good as just two of them.
Well, unless you just kind of get used to being a group of three instead of a group of two.
But
Then you
you're
can
not
really
supposed
play in
to
the
do
garden
that.
together.
Some of the amalgamates were groups of three or groups of 5 or
17.
however many were dogs are in there.
Snowdrake's mother was like 17 other people.
That is
Wow.
not good.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
And all the dogs were with each other, but they're dogs, so they probably were okay with that.
Yeah, but still,
Reaper Bird was what, 3?
I don't know.
At least. Anyway, we have some great expertise on
Anyway,
minds.
Yeah.
we don't.
Yeah,
We definitely have
expertise is definitely the word I was looking
Today on reading vitamin D and amalgamates. They should give vitamin D too. Can they get vitamin D in the underground? It's from the sun.
for. Maybe
Wait,
they
well,
didn't.
that's a fish.
They didn't
And
need
if
that.
Fatty acids come from fish.
Only humans needed the vitamin D.
Oh, that's
Hey,
what
All right.
I'm really curious.
determined.
We gotta quit.
I'm
We gotta
thinking
quit.
Fatty acids, they were fat acids.
I'm not understanding this
You're just gonna quit the recording here, aren't you?